Okay, we're on the Nude tour in Europe. Okay, first of all, I think one of the funny things about it was just how Prince looked. I mean, he had the Lovesexy here, basically. Unfortunately, this book dates, so this is actually what Prince looked like in a colour photo. So he's got this sort of weird sort of stalker almost type beard. He's got the fedora, but he's got the very short hair. And I think this was part of the criticism people had of Prince in this era, was that he was chasing trends, but this is a black artist, and he looks, for goodness sake, he looks whiter than me, and I have no African American blood in me there, basically, although it could be an overexposed photo too. And I think a lot of black people are like, yo man, this brother out to lunch, he ain't even like us no more, you know? And basically, and he was playing to white people in Europe pretty much. Okay, some of the media magazines had a field day talking about this tour, as you can see. I mean, just look at some of these funny pictures. This one actually cracks me up, especially as translating Prince into foreign languages. See, like this, Montjuic Conne Vibro. But the funniest one is this one down here, which is obviously Portuguese or Spanish, and it says sexo and rock. Is sexo, someone Hispanic, please tell me, is sexo the Spanish word for sex? Surely not. But I think it's funny because, and it also sums up one of the faults of why the Nude tour was not a massive smash like the Lovesexy tour was. Even though with Lovesexy, yes, Michael Jackson was kind of playing at the same time and Prince was kind of trailing him, Lovesexy was huge. But with this one, you had like 3 massive other tours going around Europe in the summer of 1990. One of them was the Rolling Stones. Now, as you know, the Rolling Stones are probably the most monumental rock group of all history. I mean, now some of their music's alright, but generally they appeal to the big meathead demographic. They had a massive comeback album in 1990 with an album called 89 with Steel Wheels. Basically, some people joked about it because in those days, if you were like 45 years old and still making music, you were considered over the hill. Of course, now no one bats an eyelid when these same groups are in their late 70s and they're still out touring and everything else. But in the late 1980s, you know, having a 45-year-old person making music was a joke. I mean, in fact, even when we talk about Graffiti Bridge later, the movie, some people were giving Prince shit because he was over 30. I mean, this was an era of like 21-year-old ingenues making kiddie pop rap, basically, and kiddie pop music. So they were selling out all around Europe. I mean, Steel Wheels was probably the biggest tour. It made something like nearly $100 million, much bigger than in 1981. And there was another thing, Stones hadn't toured since 81. Of course, as you know, Prince played infamously a couple of, well, 82 in Europe, actually. They did the 82 tour in Europe. But they were basically playing the same shit, Tattoo You era shit. And the Stones were always a good concert because they always played a lot of the classic stuff. They didn't really play much of the new stuff, you know. And also another big one too was Madonna. Now Madonna, as you know, is one of my absolute favorite artists, but she had this big fucking, see here, this was her speaker, this was her speaker cone bra phase and her, blonde ambition phase. She'd had a massive hit in the early 1990 Vogue, which is probably one of the greatest songs ever made, basically. And also she had the I'm Breathless soundtrack. And she was having a big tour, and that was massive. Even in the Catholic parts, we were getting pissed off with her anti-Catholic and her slutty imagery. And Madonna was slutting it up on stage, and people were lapping it up like crazy. And the third tour, which probably applied to the more avant-garde fans, more rather than, which it probably did actually cross into some of the Prince fans, was David Bowie. David Bowie was having the Changes Bowie tour in 1990. It didn't quite do so well. Again, like Prince, his latest project hadn't done well. The Tin Machine thing was tanking, so basically, like Prince, Bowie was pretty much doing a greatest hits review with his Changes Bowie tour. And so basically you had these 3 massive tours which were competing with Prince, and unfortunately I think the Rolling Stones were the clear winner, followed by Madonna and Bowie and Prince lapping up the spoils. But as you see, now we're going to discuss some of these shows, and then we're going to get into the final part of these videos, which is basically reaction to the Nude tour. Okay, so we'll just briefly go through some of these shows. I'll just tell you if anything's interesting. Okay, as you saw in the ticket montage in the other video, the Dutch shows did very well. The first 2 shows were in Dutch. They did 80,000 tours. The tickets ranged between 40 and 60 guilders each, which was actually quite cheap. Then on the 5th of June, he moved to basically Copenhagen in Denmark. That show actually didn't do quite so well. 15,000 went, but I think it was a small union. I mean, normally he'd played a much bigger Valbyhallen, but this was a smaller stadium. He also did an after show at the Copenhagen concert, which went down very well. Okay, and then he went to Germany for basically 8 concerts. Okay, most of these concerts did not sell out. Part of the reason was the very high ticket prices, between 45 and 55 Deutschmarks, which was, well, basically a Deutschmark was worth nearly a guilder and a half, so you're paying a lot more. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of Germans nipped across the border into the Netherlands or into Lille, France, which is in the far northeast of the country, to see Prince because it was expensive. Some of these shows did pretty well though. Probably the biggest show was the one in Hamburg, basically, which had 30,000 people showing up. On the other hand, two smaller shows at the that was Hanover. The two Hamburg shows did poorly, of only 7,000. Dortmund was under 14,000. A big show in Munich, which was supposed to be huge, only did 30,000 out of 58,000 seats. Okay, in Paris he went to a nightclub. No, basically now when he went to France he did quite well. He's nearly sold out of 60,000. 60,000 venue. Now France had something a bit different from the other places, whereas Germany and Netherlands had basically two tiers not far apart, and that generally depended on where you wanted to be in the room. The French had these 3 layers of tickets. They had 165 and 175 francs, which is your standard entrance, but they also had a 350 franc VIP section, which was right in front of the stage, basically. And the 350 franc ones didn't do well. However, that was in Paris. However, when he went to Lille, it was just the 280, 165 francs. Now, then he moved across to the UK, and he did no less than 7 shows in a row on the 19th of June. Now, at this stage too, he was pretty much playing a concert like 3 days out of every 4. He was hardly like even between Lille and the UK, he only took 2 days off, and that would have been to get everyone across the channel pretty much. He basically played 7 shows in a row at Wembley. Okay, 11,195 went to every show. Every single show sold out. In all, something like 175,000 people saw the Wembley shows pretty much, and overall it was nearly 250,000 people in Britain. Prince was easily at his biggest in Britain because in 1990, the Batman and the Graffiti Bridge albums both got to number 2 on the the British charts, did massively well, sold a lot of copies. I'm not sure, but I even suspect that one of them might have actually spent a week at number 1. I might be wrong, please quote me if I am, but they did incredibly well, probably Prince's best numbers since the start of his career. I mean, his 80s stuff didn't really catch on that well in Britain. Not really until Lovesexy. I mean, the British just really got into that sort of funky dance vibe. And then he went on to do 2 shows at basically the Birmingham Stadium, which was 13,000 pretty much. Another good thing about Britain was the shows were very cheap. They only cost £16 or £18.50, which was actually less than the £21 charged at the Lovesexy concerts. Okay, and then he did he went back to Wembley after 3 shows in Birmingham, did 2 more shows, and then basically went across to Ireland on the 7th of July. He £19.50 Irish punts. At the time, the Irish punt was worth slightly less than the British pound, so it's about the same price. Almost 55,000 people showed up to this Irish show though, but again, it still didn't go down well. He went back to Wembley for 3 more shows at there. Again, those did extremely well. Then up to Birmingham on the 13th of July. Then basically he left the UK and went across to Switzerland. Okay, he went to a place called St. Jacobs, I think it is. I don't even know where that is. Maybe it's some suburb of some city. I suspect it's probably part of Zurich. 46 francs to get into that show, and that was the first show where Lois Lane were doing the support. Okay, and then I can't even read this writing yet. Yes, and then he went to Rome basically, and that show did very badly. Only 13,000 sold out of 35,000 seats, and that also included quite a lot of people who had tickets from the Lovesexy show in Milan that was cancelled, and that was comped, and they got in there too. So imagine how bad this was. He went to another place in Italy, which he only sold 5,000 seats out of 30,000. I'm very sorry, I can't read my writing, unfortunately. It's just very hard writing all this down. Then he went across to Spain 4 days later. He took a bit of a mini break, and in Spain things were much better, basically. We don't know how much the tickets cost in Italy, but my guess is probably around 50,000 lira. In Spain, it was looking at 4,000 pesetas to the Madrid show, and that was the one that had nearly 65,000 people attend. That was a massive show. Again, that had Lois Lane and Katama both playing. Then he went down to Valencia. That show was cheaper, only 3,000 pesetas. 50,000 people showed up. And then 25th of July, he went up the coast to Barcelona and played another massive show. 4,000 pesetas to get in. Okay, and also again they had Kitama and Lois Lane, and 35,000 showed up out of 65,000. But 4 people showed up at that concert that would change Prince's life forever. They included basically Mr. and Mrs. Garcia and their daughters, including young Mighty. Basically, that was when Mighty went to the show. That was basically where apparently she had a tape passed back to one of the bodyguards. Prince watched it, and then Prince wanted to meet her, and he was just blown away, basically. Anyway, and then pretty much that's when Prince and Mighty started staying in touch when she was 16. Another big show in Marbella, 15,000, and then La Coruna, which is up on the west coast in Galicia, again 4,000 pesetas, and then he took a big break. He flew back to America to do some more work on Graffiti Bridge, and then pretty much he arrived back on the 4th of August, 5 days later, and basically he went back to London. Oh, sorry, let me read this here. Oh no, in Belgium. He went to a place called I can't read this, but it was somewhere in Belgium. He only sold 21,000 of the 50,000 seats. It cost 1,000 or 900 Belgian francs. He went across to Rotterdam in the Netherlands again, and he played with Lois Lane. That show did very well, 12,000. Then across to Dortmund and Mannheim in Germany. Now, Mannheim in Germany is important, the 8th of August, because that was the show where Mighty's family was staying nearby. That's where Prince met her, and Prince brought her over to his hotel suite, and they talked all night, and that's where she learned about the concept of fufu and all that stuff. And then after that, Prince went to Gothenburg in Sweden and asked Mighty to keep singing her tapes of dancing. By this stage, Prince had basically brought the song Thieves in the Temple into the act, because it was now a hit. The shows in Sweden did very well. Okay, then he went to then he did another one in Stockholm, which also did well, 14,000 people. 215 krona was the cost of the tickets. And then there was a guest called Martin Verdonk, who came on stage and played some shit. I can't remember what it says here. But that was in Lausanne, Switzerland. He was some guitar player Prince was enamored with. Back to Nice in France. This was the big show where Prince and Rush released Graffiti Bridge. Only 20 or 40,000 people showed up. Again, two-tier pricing, 300 francs VIP, 165 standard. Then he played another show at Wembley on the 20th of August. Then he went up to Manchester on the 21st, and that was a big show. That was 35,000 seats sold. And then last 3 shows, he basically played at Wembley again, 22nd to 24th of August. Then he had another break of 5 days again back to the USA to record some more songs, including some of the mixes for Diamonds and Pearls. He also worked more on some Graffiti Bridge. 30th of August, he was back in Japan. He played 5 shows in Japan. We don't have the prices for all of them, but 2 of the shows cost 9,000 yen, which was way up from the 4,000 to 6,000 yen you paid at Lovesexy. We got to remember though, in 1988, Japan was very rich. Again, most of the shows sold nearly sold out. Some 200,000 people saw the Japanese tour. It was basically 1 show in Tokyo, 2 shows in Tokyo on the last days of August, then 2 shows at a place called Nishimura, then Sapporo, and Yokohama was the last show on the 10th of September 1990, and that was sold out. And basically towards the end of the show, he was basically playing I'll Take You There. And the Mavis Staples said, I just saw this included, Respect Yourself, Let's Do It Again, Time Waits for No One, and I'll Take You There, and of course Jaguar. So there you are. There's the whole the Nude tour. Very big, very popular tour. Towards the end especially. People realised they weren't going to see Prince again for quite a while. Now let's talk about reactions to the show. Now, just looking at Hamish, who's a big fan, he's actually reviewing bootlegs, but he said that people received these shows very well, these after shows. The Tokyo Dome show was very well received. Same with this Rupert's Nightclub show. Generally, a lot of the complaints you get from reading these books, especially this one, is that people were not happy with the fact that it wasn't Lovesexy Part 2. A lot of people criticised the fact that there was no Cat, there was no Sheila E. They felt the biggest criticism really went towards the Game Boys. They felt that the free hip-hop dances were just cheapening the vision of the show. That one person referred to them as being trundled out on stage. They didn't really have the punch, they didn't really have the power of the earlier shows. Other people criticised it for the fact there was no real unified theme going on. With Lovesexy, there was the big theme. With Sign of the Times, there was the whole, basically, boy chases boy, boy gets girl story. The Hit and Run tour was all basically funk in your face. Purple Rain, of course, that sung itself. But the Nude tour was just really basically almost like an oldies folk tour, roll out the hits again, let's play Purple Rain one more time type thing. And some people also felt too that Prince was very distant. He wasn't really interacting with the crowd like he was in earlier tours. They felt like, you know, Prince was just kind of going through the motions, you know. See, like, but then again, there were some good ones. Like here, this is one about Wembley. Prince's reputation for being, in rock terms at least, the greatest show on earth is indeed justified. No one else has mastered and subverted the conventions of both guitar-driven arena rock and polyrhythmic funk dancing to the extent he has, let alone combined them with a repertoire of superbly eccentric songs and unashamedly manipulative grasp of showmanship and stagecraft. That's done well. But then again, I'm just see if I can find a negative review, basically. Yeah. Okay. Where was it? There you are. This is another one. This is This is actually someone from who went to a Dutch show, but again, it's a British reviewer. The visual side of the show is almost non-existent. The show is in serious danger of turning out to be just another rock gig. The future leads neatly into 1999, and with it comes a second disappointment. A trio of male dancers trundle onto the stage, causing no sensation whatsoever. Why wasn't Prince listening to this when he decided to make, you know, Tony M step to the mic? Anyway, just plodding through some routine steps like big fun with funk implants. There's no Cat, there's no Sheila E. Prince is playing it very straight indeed. You know, basically. So, I mean, people weren't that happy with it. And basically, you know, no, there was bad publicity, like on his birthday show, basically, in Hamburg. That was the one that wasn't really big show. He was supposed to go to basically a big promotional lunch with Weir Records and the German concert promoter, but instead he chose to go to a nightclub and party with people. That was one where he actually had a cake put on stage and he started nibbling at it like a rabbit, basically. And I think that was another thing too, is he kind of looked like a watered down Michael Jackson with this straight hair and this bleached white skin, you know. This was another reaction, was that Prince was just another too rich American, you see, overpaid, oversexed, over here, basically. So, I mean, there was a lot of ridicule, and I think here, definitely some of these outfits, you know, look pretty bad. I mean, also, and unfortunately, it's 1990. This is like the worst era for fashion. I mean, you know, Prince actually had a Miko, and sometimes even occasionally he'd guest up a guy called Tommy Elm from Mavis Staples' band, who became Tommy Barbarella, because there was actually one show where Matt Fink couldn't make it, and Prince was like, "See ya, bye." And apparently, he was playing a keytar. Did you guys remember those hideous keytars that were popular around 1987 to 1989? And I think that what it was too. Another thing that people did not like about this tour was that they just felt it added nothing new. But still, you know, and also again, like with Sign of the Times, there was a lot of anger because Prince didn't play it in the USA. So what can you say? I mean, it didn't matter what Prince did. He did it right, he did it wrong. Overall, though, summing up, the tour was a massive financial success. It made a lot of money for Prince. Even at this stage, though, his bankruptcy worries he had back in the Lovesexy era are gone, because Batman was a hit and they'd given him quite a lot of money. And also, too, I mean, the fact that Nothing Compares to You was such a massive hit for Sinead O'Connor is part of the reason why he made a shitload of money out of that song. So by the end of 1990, Prince was flush with cash, basically. Fortunately, what would Prince's next move be? Graffiti Bridge, which tanked and was an almighty flop, but then after that, things started to come right for him. That was the Diamonds and Pearls era. That was the time when he really gelled with the whole, you know, new band. I mean, part of the thing was after the Nude tour, a lot of this band Prince was playing with was basically jettisoned. Miko was gone. Levi moved up to lead guitar, and of course Michael Bland became permanent. Sonny T was brought in on the bass guitar, and Tommy Elm became the new keyboardist. Basically, Rosie Gaines was kept as a backing singer. The Game Boys were still there, and of course in brought were two new female dancers, Diamond and Pearl. But that's 1991, and that's how this pretty much neatly feeds on to my fandom series, where I start with Diamonds and Pearls. Okay, and just a bit of housekeeping. Thanks for the reaction to the last video. I was absolutely blown away by the fact that it shot up to over 100 views very quickly, and that's really encouraging, and I thank you all for it. And yeah, so that was the Nude tour. Peace and be wild.